Okay, it looks like we're just about ready to get started. I'm going to talk very quickly about some basic WebEx housekeeping. We've already covered the video, but I'm going to talk about the mute for a moment. And we really appreciate it if you guys stay muted until we get to the Q&A. You joined this muted, and you can tell that you're muted because you have a red microphone icon next to your name. When we get to Q&A, you can raise your hand using the button in WebEx, and we'll call on you. And then you can unmute yourself, or if you can't find it, I can probably get it for you. And I see we have one person on a mobile device. Mobile can't raise hands, so you should use the chat to submit a question. And Rama in the group is taking questions. Or you can also do a send to everyone. And the rest of you can submit questions via the chat as well if you don't feel like talking or waiting around. Okay, over to you, Anna.
Great, thanks so much, Fitzgerald. We're really lucky to have AFSC's tech support in helping put this webinar together. I believe we're going to be recording. Would now be a good time to start recording, Fitzgerald, if it hasn't happened already?
About 90 seconds ahead of you.
Terrific. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this webinar on AFSC's new investment and divestment tool at afsc.org/investigate. We're really excited to have everybody here with us. It's great to see lots of familiar names and also new ones. We welcome you all. My name is Anna Baltzer. I'm national organizer with the U.S. campaign to end the Israeli occupation, and I'm joined by my colleague Rama Kudaimi, membership and outreach coordinator of the U.S. campaign, who's going to be helping with some of the technology and getting your questions during the Q&A session, and hopefully you'll hear from her later as well. Tonight's webinar, of course, is on the new Investigate tool. Before we get into the actual content of the webinar, where I'll be introducing Dalit, who will talk about it, I wanted to just practice a little bit of the technology because I know this stuff, especially if it's the first time you're using it, can be a little bit cumbersome or intimidating for some people, and I just figured it was useful to practice for a moment, and then we can get over that hump together, all of us. So how about if everybody raises their hand right now, and we can just check that everybody knows how to raise their hand. I'm going to raise my hand. There's a little button that says raise hand, and it should be below all the participants. Great. Looks like a lot of people are finding it. Terrific. Some others are still looking. It just has a little hand icon, and on my screen it's in the middle of the right margin, and it has a little hand, and if you click on it, it raises your hand, and what that does is that when we get to the Q&A, it'll help me see who has a question or who wants to say something. So a few more people might want to try raising their hands, and then we'll all lower our hands together. Great. All right, almost everybody. Terrific. Okay, let's all now manually lower the hand so we don't get confused later and think people who are practicing actually have a question. So please, everybody, lower your hand right now. Terrific. And now let's try out the chat feature. So you should be able to control actually who you're chatting to, whether it's to everyone or just the presenters. Maybe you can even do it just to the host, maybe even to each other. I'm not sure what you guys see because I'm one of the presenters, but let's all chat into everybody. Gosh, my questions are always so boring. How about what it's like outside? I know, for example, I'm looking outside to a beautiful sunset, so that's what I'm going to type in. So you can say if it's raining, is it dark, is the sun setting, is it sunny, is it hot, is it cold, anything. Just really, we're just trying to practice using the chat feature. So Gloria's from Salem, Oregon. Yes, we know. I'm jealous. Oh, and San Francisco too. Dark and rainy. All right, terrific. Thanks very much, everyone. Keep them coming. Excellent. The chat feature can be a really neat, windy, yes. The chat feature can be really nice also because you can also be chatting during the presentation, and people can be kind of connecting with one another, responding to one another. Rama will be monitoring the chats as well, so please feel free to use that chat feature especially in the time leading up to the Q&A, but it can also be useful during the Q&A. Fantastic. Someone said they can't find everyone, but guess, oh no, yeah, it just came to me. So if you're having trouble figuring out who to send something to, on my screen it says send to, and then you have a place where you can kind of select from a drop-down menu, and you want to select everyone, and hopefully most people are able to see that. You can also send something directly to Rama, who is helping with tech support, if that's your preference. All right, so with that, I think we'll start the programmatic portion of the webinar. Tonight we're going to have a presentation by Dalit Baum, who is the economic activism. I want to get this exactly right. Yeah, Director of Economic Activism for the American Friends Service Committee, which is a member group of the U.S. Campaign to End the Israeli Occupation. We're really privileged to have her here with us, and she's going to be giving sort of a 20-minute or so introduction to this new tool, talking about, and she'll go through her whole presentation for you, but of course, but she's going to be talking about the new screening tool for portfolios, about a new divestment list, about new company research, and we'll have lots of time for your questions as well. And there's nothing, by the way, stopping you from practicing using the tool during this presentation as well, which you can always find at afsc.org/investigate. And so anyway, after Dalit's presentation, we'll have a Q&A session to work through any kinks or hear any questions you guys might have. So Dalit Baum is Director of Economic Activism at American Friends Service Committee. She also co-founded Who Profits from the Occupation, which is an Israeli research project that many of us know from its crucial research on corporations profiting from the Israeli occupation and Israel's apartheid policies, used by many of us in our boycott and divestment campaigns. She also put together the amazing Global Exchange Economic Activism Project, which, if you've never seen it, is fantastic. Go to globalexchange.org well, you can go to the campaigns themselves, /Caterpillar, /Veolia, /HP. Great research there as well. So she has a wealth of experience, and we're really privileged to have her with us tonight. And with that, I will pass things over to Dalit to do her presentation.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm really excited today to present our new tool to you all, because we've been working on it for a very long time, and it feels like a kind of a launch celebration for us to present it at this forum. So this is very exciting. I put up a slide with the main topics on this short presentation. As you can see, I'm going to talk a little bit about socially responsible investment, because we think of this tool as an investment tool, not just a divestment tool, and that's important for people to understand. So let me start with that and say a few words about that. I know that many of you probably know about socially responsible investment. It's also sometimes called sustainable, responsible impact investment, or ESG, environment, social, and governance screening on investment. But the whole idea is that this is a form of investment that also takes into account social issues, environmental issues, issues that are not directly related to the outcome financially of the investment. There is a lot of money in socially responsible investment around the country and around the world. It is estimated that 1 out of each $6 is invested in SRI funds, and that's a big deal. What does it mean? It means that these are investors that actually care about some issues that they think would have an impact on their investments, that are not just how profitable the stock is right now. And therefore, when we talk about divestment or any kind of investor activism, these investors are the investors that we want to talk to. These are the people that can actually move their money or use it in order to impact corporate responsibility. So the tool we have come up with is the tool that targets responsible investors. And responsible investors can range from faith groups and their pension funds or public pension funds. Many of the institutional investors in Europe are responsible investment funds. The same is true with many individuals that don't want to be invested in some things and want to be invested in other things and want their money to work for them in all sorts of ways. So let me show you now our tools. Let's see how this technology works. I'm trying to share my screen with you. This is the tool. You should see it in a square on your screen, and if you double click on it, it will get a little bigger. So you can find this on afsc.org/investigate. And one of the first things you can do when you are using this tool is to just check a company, check out a company. So you click here on the right on type names and type in a name of a company. So let me just try and do that. And I'll type in something I know will provide us with some answers. SodaStream. And then I hit the button scan. And then I wait. There is some wait. There is this bar on the right that shows the progress of the scan. You see SodaStream came up. Not only did it come up, it came up with the exclamation mark, which tells us this company is a divestment target. If I click on the company name, I can find out more information about this company. And if I scroll down and look at this information, it tells us that this is a company that makes soda devices and it is made in a settlement, in an illegal settlement in the West Bank. But it also tells us that the information comes from whoprofits.org. So you would ask, why won't I go to whoprofits.org and find this information from the source? And my answer would be, go to whoprofits.org. There will be probably more information there about the company. But what you will not find there is information for investors. Anything that comes after this quote is the information that we have added to this specific tool, which is dedicated to investor activism and to divestment. And for example, here it tells us which are the other responsible investors around the world that have taken action regarding this company's complicity in human rights violations. In this case, you see there was some divestment resolution and there is an actual divestment that was done. So that's useful because investors, I think, would like to know what other investors have done with the same company. If I go back to the main screen and try and run another company, many of you probably heard about another settlement company called Ahava that makes cosmetics in an illegal settlement in the West Bank. You will actually not find it. If I run Ahava on the screen, you will not find it on this website. It will come up short. And the reason is that this is a tool for investors. So the only companies listed here are publicly traded companies, companies that are traded on stock exchanges around the world, all over around the world. So if the company is a privately held company, such as Ahava, you will not see it here. And this is where I plug in the little suggestion of using the original main database for corporate complicity in the occupation, which is whoprofits.org, that would list also privately owned companies. This is whoprofits.org. You can see it here. It's a very extensive database. And if you run the search for Ahava, you will find the Dead Sea Cosmetics company here that is made in an illegal West Bank settlement. So why did we bother to come up with a whole new tool if we just quote whoprofits.org? One reason is that we add more information. Let me show you, for example, another such company. I'm going to put in General Electric. Now, General Electric, as you know, is a big American company. It also appears on many portfolios of many investors. Today was their shareholder meeting, by the way. And they are recommended for divestment. you have the red exclamation mark here that says they are recommended for divestment. And if you look for more information, you will find out that this is actually a big weapons company. They make engines for all sorts of big weaponry platforms, including Apache helicopters and so on. So this is all information that goes beyond what you can find anywhere else. In general, the information found on whoprofits.org does not include any information about weaponry. It is just about civilian connections of the occupation. Our tool tries to cover everything, including military suppliers. So it is more extensive on one end by covering military supplies, and less extensive because it only focuses on publicly traded companies. So you can see General Electric here. You can see how they are complicit in supplying military components and platforms to the Israeli military. You can also read here about how these tools have been used in war crimes in Gaza, in the West Bank. Recently, we try and keep this tool as updated as possible, so we hope to continue updating it. And here you can read more about what investors have done. If it was students who passed the investment resolutions explicitly mentioning this company, if it was investors that engaged with the company and tried to get it to change its policies, and so on. All sorts of activism or even shareholder resolutions, whatever we could find that was publicly published, we try to collect here on this tool. So now I will try and show you just one last company that I wanted to pause with, and that's General Mills, another general company, or the Generals. Now, General Mills is better known as the Pillsbury Company, and it's here, but it's the first company I show you which is not a divestment target, or not targeted for divestment. It doesn't have the red exclamation mark next to its name. And I have to explain that because I was asked many questions about that. General Mills, as you can see here, sources some of its products from a factory in an illegal industrial zone in an Israeli settlement. That's not the same level of complicity as operating your own factory in the West Bank. Another thing is that we don't know of many investor activism targeting General Mills, and we want to encourage more of that. So the idea of putting their name here is to say you should know what this company is doing. It's your decision as an investor whether or not you want to continue being invested in this company. We don't know of others who have targeted this company for divestment. We don't know of others who have tried reasoning with them, contacting them, passing shareholder resolutions, or whatever can be done. We want people to do something about it. Now, this is the idea of BDS. The idea is you have to figure out where is your complicity as an investor in this case, but it can be another complicity as a taxpayer or as a consumer. And then once you figure out your complicity, you try to use it to change things, to change, in this case, to change corporate policy. Try to use your complicity to put pressure on this company. Okay, so I've been showing you this one feature again and again and again. Let's see some more advanced features of this tool. And in fact, I'm moving to the second part of the presentation, which is about how to scan your investments. And here you can be an individual investor. You can be somebody who has some money in a pension fund, or you can be someone who whose employer supplies them with the pension fund, or you can be somebody who works within the confines of a big institution that has an endowment or has some other pension fund. It can be a university or a hospital or a school or a church that you're associated with, that you care about, that have some investments. And your obligation would be to try and find out what they are invested in. And if they are invested in some of these companies, try and use that investment to put pressure on these companies. And that can be through investor activism, or in some extreme cases, as we saw with some of these companies, by dropping that investment because it's a lost cause and these companies have not been responding to pressure so far. So let's start, for example, with my own pension fund. As an employee of the American Friends Service Committee, all of us have the same pension fund, which is TIAA-CREF, one of the biggest pension fund providers in the country. And I actually have their report here. The one thing you need to put your hand on, and as an investor or as someone who this is your pension fund, you should have access to this information. It should be the list of holdings of the fund. The list of holdings. Now, some funds don't publish their list of holdings on a continuous basis. And the list of holdings changes all the time. They buy, they sell, blah, blah, blah. But at least once a year, they have to publish an annual report. And what you see right now in front of you is the annual report of some of the funds of TIAA-CREF. It's through to the end of 2014, so it's the most recent one. So it will give us an indication of what was true then, at the end of 2014, not now. That's the best we can do right now. And the one fund we are interested in is the fund here on the right that is called Social Choice. The Social Choice account of this fund provider is their socially responsible fund. In other words, this is the fund that actually takes into account social issues. And according to their own announcement, they would not invest in companies that are involved in severe human rights violations. So we and many other members of the US campaign were part of a national campaign asking TIAA-CREF to divest from the Israeli occupation, to acknowledge that human rights violations as part of the Israeli occupation are severe human rights violations, that Palestinian rights are human rights. And this is surprisingly hard. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to select a file from my computer. I've downloaded that PDF. So I hit Browse, and it's easy because I've already prepared it here for you. It's TIAA-CREF Social Choice. And then I'm going to upload it. I'm waiting until it's uploaded, and you can see the file is up there, and then I hit Scan. Now this is something that no other tool can do right now. Scanning or looking for one company at a time on Who Profits is one way, but to scan a big list of holdings is really hard. I have done that many times manually using my eyes, and you have to really be very familiar with the list of companies in order to do that. Right now, this is something that was done. You get the report. These are all the companies that were found on the TIAA-CREF Social Choice account that is supposedly socially responsible. All of these companies are complicit in human rights violations as part of the Israeli occupation, and of them 6 are not just complicit, but the worst violators that we say divest. There is no other option here because other options were exhausted. Let's just go to one of them, of course, Caterpillar. Let's go to Caterpillar and see what we have here. This company has been targeted for divestment. You have the reason why from whoprofits.org, and you have a long list of stories about other investors that have divested or engaged or tried to influence the company, and students that pass student resolutions asking the university to divest and so on. So anyone who is invested in Caterpillar can read that and see that they would not be the first to care about this company. You also have a links on the side to more information about this controversy, different campaigns, different reports that mention them. That can be useful. You can also see here something that is called reasons included. One is saying military, and one is saying occupation. These are the 2 categories of inclusion, the 2 screens as we call them. It says to us that the company is here because it is complicit in the Israeli occupation, and it is also here because we see it as a military supplier to the Israeli military that supplies tools that have been used in severe human rights violations. The separation is a little technical. It comes from the difference between this database and the who-profits database that does not include weaponry. But in this case, Caterpillar is both a weapons company and a civilian supplier of tools to the occupation, bulldozers that destroy houses and so on. Let me show you another thing. If I just try and go back. When you have this search, you can print the result of the search. You can also see something here that says view all occurrences. If I click on that, you see a simplified version of the PDF that we have uploaded. This is the same report we saw before, the Social Choice Account Fund report from December 31st. And all of the different companies are listed here on the right. And if I click next to the company, it will show me the page of the report where this company is mentioned, and it will highlight it. Now, we have found that this is a very crucial feature of this tool, because you have to realize the PDF I've uploaded has more than 400 pages. And I want to know if we are invested in Caterpillar, but I also want to know for how much money. So once I know Caterpillar is there, I want to go and see where it is mentioned and how much money is listed next to it. I also want to know maybe in which chapter of the report does it appear, because maybe different chapters represent different parts of the investment. So I want to be able to scroll here to go to page 24 or page 25 and see where are these highlighted companies, where do they appear? And this feature allows me to do that, and then I can go back to the results and see the report of all the companies found on this portfolio. Let's try one more such search, and then we'll move on. If we are looking at investors, we also have a tab here called For Investors, which explains how to use this tool and why is it here and what is it for. If you scroll down, we have done another thing here that might be useful. We have tried to already use the tool on some socially responsible, out there in the market, mutual funds. So people who are responsible investors and want to have their money in socially responsible mutual funds, but are not sure if these mutual funds are just like TIAF, maybe call themselves socially responsible, but also heavily invested in the occupation, then we have tried to check some of these funds for them already. And we came up with this list. It's a very preliminary list, but it shows you that there are funds out there, and these are some of them, that are already occupation-free. So if investors are, if you yourself or somebody is asking you for recommendations, where should I put my money? This is the beginning of a list of recommendations. And still, you should know that this is just a preliminary list and it's based on a one-time check. So wherever investors put their money, they should ask explicitly for their fund to be occupation-free. And you can actually give the link to this tool and say, I want to know if you're invested in any of these companies. We have another tab here for students. So let me go now for the students. Students, of course, are just one example of what happens when you're associated with a big endowment. Students are associated with their university's endowment. And we know of all these student divestment campaigns. For students, many times the big difficulty is coming up with the list of holdings of their universities. And sometimes for private schools, this is quite impossible. And the campaign should be about transparency and about having students say on these issues. Once you have the list of holdings of the university, you can run this tool on it. If you don't, then one thing to do is to contact me. I will try and help. Another thing that you can do is use this tool to come up with some ideas for a resolution, like educating about these issues, giving some examples of companies that are complicit in the occupation and asking the school to adopt these screens. So let's try one of these searches. I will show you something quite remarkable, which is this is the University of California Chief Investment Officer website. And this is their GEP, the General Endowment Fund of the university. And we have a list of holdings for the GEP. And it's true for December 31st, 2012, which tells you something. It tells you that in the last 2 years, they haven't published their list of holdings, which is kind of sad. This is the best we can do right now. So let's just run the tool on that list for a moment and see what we come up with. So this is the University of California list of holdings through to 2012. So 2 years old. A lot of tension here. What will happen? You can see the bar on the right, and wait until it is done, because you want to have a complete list, and sometimes it has some corrections in the end. It drops things, it brings things back. Okay, so 9 companies found, of them 4 are recommended for divestment, including Hewlett-Packard and General Electric that we already saw, Cemex, which is a Mexican company that makes cement and have several plants in settlements and are actually depleting the West Bank of building materials, and Lockheed Martin. Let's go to Lockheed Martin. I'm just kind of bragging to you about this tool and all the work we've put into it. Lockheed Martin is the biggest weapons company in the world. So all of the information here is from the screen called military company. And it's obviously not a company that we ever think we will influence. They make F-16. They will not stop making F-16, and they kill people all around the world. They will not stop killing people in Palestine. But in Hellfire missiles. So the company is here not because we think that we can change their policies. The company is here because we think that people should not be invested in this company at all. So it's clearly just a divestment target. There is no way of confusing it with something else in our mind, speaking for the AFSC. And you have here again the list of investor activism and so on. I will use this to go to our military screen and just say one more word about the military companies. You can also reach it from here, our screen. You see occupation, military, and investments. Occupation screen is very big. It includes companies that provide all sorts of tools and services to the occupation. Military screen is kind of small. It has only these companies, 12. It's a dozen. We actually call it the dirty dozen. These are the biggest suppliers of military technologies to the Israeli military that are consistently, knowingly, over time, still are being used in war crimes and grave violations of human rights. So these are just the big ones. It's not anyone who sold anything to the Israeli military. That would be an impossible task to map. These are just the really big military suppliers. And that means that just like Lockheed Martin, investors that are already invested in these companies, such as the University of California, we just saw that the UC system is invested in Lockheed Martin, they are not socially responsible. So, because I don't think that socially responsible investors will be invested in these companies. So that tells us something about the investor and something about what we can expect of this fund in the future, if we can convince them to divest from other companies or not. I'm being a little bit too quick to judge. There are socially responsible investors who are invested in weaponry. It's just that I find that preposterous. So one last word about our screen. You see here occupation. The occupation screen is based on whoprofits.org. It's just, and you have the explanation here of what it covers. You can find more explanations in the original on whoprofits.org. We have just added to these companies information about investor activism and what investors could do, and links to campaigns whenever possible, and so on. the military screen, which I've just shown you. And then we have divestment that I will delay for a moment and talk about it next. But before I talk about divestment and the divestment screen, I want to say that we are presently working on a third screen to add to occupation and military. So occupation is O, military M, and our new screen will be called prisons. We have this big project now going on in the AFSC, researching the privatized services and operations of prisons in this country, and we will add this to this screen. So it goes beyond Israel-Palestine. This tool will serve more issues than just Israel-Palestine issues. Okay, so now to our last section of this presentation. I just want to show you all of the features that you can use here, and that is our divestment list. And this is actually the first time that we have in one place a divestment list. So I should say a few words about how we put it together. You have it here in the explanation of AFSC's policy and so on, but really, this is the list. It's not very big. Sorry, I'm trying to get it right here. There are 28 companies on this list, but it's also not a very stable list. The list is dynamic. We add and remove companies because things change. For example, we used to have here Unilever because they had a plant in the West Bank, in a settlement. But Unilever has moved their plant, and they're no longer involved in that kind of business. So they were removed from this list. And also other companies might be added to this list. The list represents corporations that have been the focus of public attention, that have been engaged with over time, or alternatively corporations we do not think are targets for change of policy campaigns, such as the weapons companies. We don't think they will change their policies, so we think people should just not be invested in them, so they are not so directly complicit in the same crimes that these companies are involved in. So companies that we think right now are lost causes. In other words, if I use the actual tone of it, is companies that are deeply and directly complicit in grave human rights violations in a consistent manner over time and knowingly. So this is the list. That's it, 28 companies. If you compare it to the fossil fuel divestment campaigns, they have hundreds of companies. And they ask investors to divest from an entire industry, which is very profitable. This is a tiny little list. And I just want to break it down for you for a moment and show you, one second, let me show you something here on our main page. One of these companies is Veolia, that has been a target of campaigns all around the world, a French multinational that is moving, but not fast enough, trying to get out of their occupation business, but they're not out yet. A very famous, I think, campaign. Another one is G4S, a company that is doing private security services and involved in the prisons that hold Palestinian political prisoners in Palestine, as well as in checkpoints, and also in deportations and prisons in this country. And then the weapons companies like Lockheed Martin or Boeing that we think are not very movable in any way. But then, this is a picture I love. I'm sure some of you recognize it. This is from the moment of the vote in the Presbyterian Church USA last year almost, to divest from the Israeli occupation. And the divestment resolution of the Presbyterian Church USA actually focused on 3 companies: Hewlett-Packard, Motorola Solutions, and Caterpillar. And if we want to kind of ask ourselves why these 3, let me go back to this divestment screen. I'm going back to the tool and showing you again the same page of the divestment list, is updated divestment list. And I'll break it down for you. Some of these companies, about 10 of them, are Israeli companies, which means there are Israeli banks that build settlements, Israeli cellular companies that also build settlements and build infrastructure in settlements. These are companies that usually American investors are not invested in. It's very rare for them to be invested in the Israeli stock exchange. So they're not very relevant to campaigns here in the US. They are just important because they are important companies. Then we have another 9 or so companies here, which are weapons companies, the big weapons companies. Big weapons companies, if an investor is already invested in them, I don't think we can change their minds about anything. They will not pull out. But if you are a socially responsible investor that believes in peace, you probably are not invested in them anyhow. So they will not be on the portfolio of the Presbyterian Church USA to begin with. So what is left after all that? What is left after all that are about a little less than 10 companies. Most of them are European, just like the companies I just showed you, Veolia or G4S. These are European companies. Some of these are cement companies. There are 3 cement companies on the list that are terrible violators. One is Mexican and 2 are European. But these are European companies, again, part of maybe of an international portfolio of investment, but not of an American portfolio. The American companies that are not weapons companies are just 4. Just 4. One of them is SodaStream. SodaStream, by the way, is traded in the US stock exchange. So it is an American company. That's kind of surprising. But it's a small company, and many of these big investors are not invested in it. And then we're left with the same 3. Hewlett-Packard, Caterpillar, and Motorola Solutions. And that explains why many of these campaigns that focus on investment with socially responsible investors focus on these 3 companies, the 3 main targets that we're trying to push on their policies in Israel-Palestine. So this is our divestment list, and it can be used for all sorts of things. It can be used in a resolution. You can refer a big endowment to this list and say, whatever you do, make sure you're not invested in this company. And don't worry, because we are going to continuously update this list and make sure that it includes companies that are still involved knowingly, consistently, directly in human rights violations over time. The last thing I want to show you before we move on to the Q&A, and I really thank you for your patience in listening quietly for all this time, is our further resources. You click on resources here, you can see other publications that we have that are relevant to understanding investment and divestment around our issues. So this is some article about a new initiative of investors, of responsible investors, that shows how corporations deal with employees in Israel-Palestine or something like that. We also have a newsletter. It's going to become live again. It's been kind of dormant, as you can see here, for over a year. And yeah, kind of that. But it's going to come alive again. But even here you can see information about how investors around the world respond to the Israeli occupation. And we hope that this information will be useful for responsible investors in this country who want to know more about what is being done in other places around the world. So thank you very much for your patience. I will stop sharing my screen, and I think Anna will take it from here.
Yes, thank you so much, Dalit. That was, I mean, that was even more than I had even expected. I had myself looked through all of the facets of the new tool, and it's really, really exciting. I can't wait to be able to further explore and use all of the different, different things that it offers to this movement. And so actually before we move forward in the Q&A, I think I'm going to let our tech assistant Fitzgerald briefly mention something regarding audio settings to make sure that we don't get caught up in those. So Fitzgerald, do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. Right now you're all muted, and we're going to try to keep it that way as long as we can, because unless you're in on a headset or a really good phone, chances are we'll get some echo from you. So please do not press that red microphone button next to your name until we call on you. But when we do, you can press that button, the red microphone next to your name, and it will become just a white or gray microphone, and that will mean you're unmuted. We do have 7 people in the meeting tonight who are in as call-in user. Now, some of you may be just on the phone, but I know a couple of you at least are in WebEx here, but without an audio icon next to your name. It means you dialed the phone without adding your attendee ID number. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait to take any questions from you guys until the end and just unmute you all manually, because you guys cannot control your own mute. Okay, over to you, Anna.
All right, great. So if you guys have questions, now is a great time to raise your hand using the raise hand icon. And alternatively, especially if you're somebody who is having trouble with audio, you can also always chat your question into the chat box. And so while folks are raising their hands, and I do see we have at least a question or two so far already, I actually wanted to quickly ask Dalit. I remember the days of you know, having to scan, you know, with my eyes these long lists of investments and having to cross-reference with another list here and trying to find where they overlap. And one of the things that I think seeing the tool when it was first being developed most impressed me was that you can actually put in an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF or whatever it is, or copy and paste into that, you know, type where you can type in manually words. And you don't have to just put a pretty list of investments, right? You can kind of just push a bunch of gibberish. It can be names of corporations surrounded by a whole bunch of other text that's unrelated. And the tool is smart enough to identify within all that other, you know, context around it. It's smart enough to kind of zoom in on and identify those corporation names and sort of spit them out. Is that still the case with do people have to kind of format the things that they're uploading or the things that they're copying into that field before they put them in, or can they just put anything in?
Well, we try to make this tool most useful for scanning lists of holdings. Now, lists of holdings can come in different formats. They can be HTML, they can be a cut and paste list from a web page that you can just see on your screen. It can be a PDF. Many times it's a PDF, so uploading a PDF was one of our main goals that I'm proud of because it wasn't easy to achieve. And Excel, many of them are Excel. But the fact that there are official lists of holdings mean that we don't have spell check options. You know, we kind of assume that the company name is spelled correctly. If you misspell it, it will not come up. We don't have that. It's not just a free typing thing. That's the thing. So people use official lists of company names. Another thing that people can use, if some of you are in the investment world, you know that companies have a unique ID. It's called the ISIN. It's their ID number as a publicly traded company internationally. So just uploading a list of ISIN numbers will also do the trick. You can also scan these ID numbers. There is one feature I haven't shown just because I forgot, but I can show it very quickly, which is what happens when you upload a huge file, but only a little part of it is that list that you care about. You know, that's something that happens a lot. And I cannot do it right now, but if Fitzgerald, if you let me just take over for a moment, I will just show that. I think that could be useful.
I want to make sure we get to, I feel a little selfish throwing my question in, so if we can be super brief, even if we don't get to see the whole.
Yeah. So I'm just showing that thing very quickly. If you scan, and I'm also doing it for Lorraine, who chatted at me, asking me to show again how I uploaded a file here. I'm just uploading the same file again and scanning it. So I uploaded the file, the PDF, and I'm scanning it and waiting for the results. Then you can see that we get the results, the 14 companies or so. There is something here on the right that says focus on a range of pages. So if I only care about what happens in page number 3 of this report, because the rest of it is a big report that has all sorts of gibberish and I don't care about it, I can just write 3 and it tells me, oh, in page number 3 you can see Ford Motor Company and we actually care about it. Or we can put a range, I want pages 4 to 6. Oh, 4 to 6 includes Hewlett Packard and Motorola Solutions. And you see it's quite instantaneous. You see immediately what is in that range. And that can be really useful when you download an annual report of a big corporation or a big endowment. And the list that you actually are looking at is a very little part of that big file. So I'm sorry I haven't shown that before. But this one was for Lorraine. I don't know if I answered your question, Lorraine, but if not, please raise your hand and we'll try and answer it.
Great. Thanks, Dalit. Are there people who have questions?
Yeah.
Who want to raise their hand? Allison, terrific. So Allison, please go ahead and unmute yourself by clicking, I think, on that red microphone icon on the computer.
Allison, I'm going to lend a helping hand.
Hi, this is Allison. I didn't raise my hand. I'm not sure.
Oh, you must have had it up from the very beginning there. There's a lower hand.
That was my practice raise. I forgot to lower it. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll put your mute back on.
This is Roma. Someone had chatted in a question about REMAX.
Yes. Oh, and good. We have a bunch more questions too we want to fit in. Someone had asked if Dalit, you have any comments on REMAX as a target?
Yes. So originally, REMAX was not put on the database here because the REMAX that was mentioned on Who Profits was just the franchise of REMAX in Israel, which is a privately owned company. And as I said, our tool includes only publicly traded companies. I think we will add REMAX to the list. It will not be part of the divestment list, however. So REMAX right now is an American corporation that is targeted for public pressure. We're trying to get them to change their policies. Just for people to know, REMAX is a network of real estate agents around the world, and their franchisees in Israel are leasing and renting and selling property in illegal Israeli settlements, and also in a very discriminatory manner that is discriminating against Palestinians. So we're trying to get the American company to change its policies and to not disassociate itself from such practices, and therefore investors in REMAX should know about it and should use whatever leverage they can in order to participate in that campaign.
Great, thank you, Dalit. So we have quite a few other questions. I think one of the first I saw was Ed's question. Ed, are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Give it a try.
Great, we can hear you.
Great. So yes, I'm Ed Fegan. I'm in Silver Spring. I'm doing some work with JBT. So I played around with the database a little bit prior to the call. First of all, I'm very impressed. Congratulations. I think that the information on investor activism is really particularly helpful, not to mention the entire tool. I appreciate the tremendous amount of work that went into it. One thing I tried was I just kind of Googled Israeli companies that are listed on U.S. exchanges. And I found a list of about 125. And I just ran that and came up with about 14 hits. And I'm assuming, well, there's two possibilities. One is that the list I had was not particularly good, and a lot of these companies were not Israeli-based. Or I'm assuming that some Israeli companies listed on U.S. exchanges may not be complicit in military or occupation-related issues and aren't included in the database. But I would assume some organizations would want to know Israeli companies listed on the U.S. exchanges. I'm wondering, is it a user error on my part, or are they not included, or would you consider including them?
Yeah, thank you, Ed. It's a great question. This tool is not devised to help investors screen out Israeli companies. That's not how it is built. It is really built around the idea of responsible investment. In other words, the idea of complicity in human rights violations. And we are specifically looking for specific human rights violations that have to do with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and attacks on civilians in these areas. So this is the focus of this tool. If you read through Who Profits as well, you can see the exact definitions that were put into what kind of grave human rights violations we were looking into. So specifically, it was around settlements, and not just any service providing in settlements. That would not be included because, as you can imagine, most Israeli companies would be there. But building settlements, which is in itself a complicity in illegal activity, or providing settlements with infrastructure that is vital for their development, like long-term loans to the municipality. That's a bank, that is one of the banks on the list. It's very, very specific, and it's very carefully selected to find the companies that are really crucial for that project of that illegal project of the Israeli occupation. Another answer would be if an investor wants to divest from Israel altogether in Israeli companies, they should take into account that the global economy is not as simple as it used to be. It's very hard to define what it means for a company to be here or there. Many Israeli companies, and I mean dozens of Israeli companies are actually dually traded. They are traded both in NASDAQ and on the Israeli Stock Exchange. And also many Israeli companies are traded only in the American market, like SodaStream, they're traded in the US, or in a British stock exchange, or in another stock exchange around the world, but their headquarters and employees and most of their activity are in Israel. So they go off to a foreign a stock exchange to raise some money. So it's not so clear-cut. And on the other hand, you have companies such as Hewlett-Packard or Intel that are American companies that have a huge presence in Israel. They are the biggest high-tech companies in Israel. So they are much bigger than many other Israeli high-tech companies that might be traded elsewhere. So I think that anyone who wants to go off doing something like that will have a whole list of dilemmas to answer. It's not so simple to make these decisions. But that's not our tool. Our tool focuses on human rights violators. This is the service that we provide.
Thank you, Dalit, and thanks for that question. If I may take a liberty of adding in, as I'm learning from this tool, and it does look incredibly helpful. And you know, Dalit began talking about the ways in which this is a very specialized tool for very specific purposes that I think fill a great gap in our movement, and it's such a gift to have it. But that it's not doing everything. You know, even BDS targets like Ahabar are not listed because that's not the focus of this tool. Obviously, cultural boycott targets, academic boycott targets are not, you know, publicly traded corporations. So I think, you know, this tool is fantastic for precisely what it is. and it's good to have a sense of how it kind of fits into the broader movement. So let's see, Tom, do you want to try, Tom Wright, do you want to try and unmute yourself for your question? Looks like you're unmuted. You can talk. Uh-oh. You seem to still be muted, or we can't hear you. Okay, Tom, I'm gonna move to Shelley, and if you're able to, hopefully we'll get you after Shelley's question. Shelley, go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. You can hear me, right?
Oh, is this Tom now?
No, this is Shelley.
Oh, this is Shelley. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Okay. A quick question about the tool. Is it possible to, sometimes it's difficult to get a list of holdings for a particular fund, and I was wondering if it's possible to, do you have to have that list of holdings in hand in order to upload it, or is there some way of entering, say, a ticker symbol of the fund and pulling the information down, or do you actually have to go and find that list of holdings before you upload it?
Thank you so much, Shelley. In my fantasy tool, next stage, next generation, mainly when we get a huge donation from somebody, maybe somebody on this call, we can make that happen. We can make that happen, that you will put the ticker number, you know, the stock exchange number for the fund, and the tool will connect with the Securities Exchange Commission database, download the latest annual report, and run the search. I know such tools that are corporate Wall Street type tools that do that. We were trying to explore how to do that, and we found out it will just be very expensive because you have to buy the Securities Exchange Commission database, which is a public database, but you cannot really put it into your tool unless you buy it, and that's kind of an expensive thing. So right now the tool is for people who are willing to do some work. So one way you can go about it is to yourself go to the SEC's database. It's called EDGAR, E-D-G-A-R, EDGAR. It's a very friendly database. So you go to just Google EDGAR, go there, put in the ticker symbol for the fund, look for that fund's latest annual report, download it, and then run the tool on it. I am so sorry that we don't have a faster solution.
Thanks, Dalit. So let's loop back to Tom there. I don't know if you've had any more luck, if you want to try talking. Tom Wright. And if that doesn't work, then Tom, perhaps you can chat in your question, and we'll read it out after our next question, which will be from Curtis. Curtis, do you want to unmute yourself and bring your question? Curtis Bell. Fitzgerald, do you want to help? Thanks.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
The list of socially responsible funds that are occupation-free, do any of those actually screen for occupation freeness, or does it just happen that this current status is occupation-free?
Thank you, Curtis. A fabulous question again. Of course, there is a story behind that as well. Mutual funds that are socially responsible and happen to be occupation-free, last we checked, which is that list I've shown you, it's very, you know, we should ask why. How did they get to be occupation-free? Is it by choice? And we specifically didn't write there that these funds screen for these issues because maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't, maybe some of them do but do not want to be presented as such because they don't want to be the center of some public controversy. Maybe for some of them it is just a coincidence, or maybe just a temporary coincidence. Maybe it has changed since. Maybe they have bought some stock in Hewlett Packard since we last checked. The main thing about this industry that people should know is that just like any other thing in capitalism, demand creates the supply. So what we want people to do is, if they are investors in anything, is to contact their money manager and to contact their mutual fund provider or their pension fund provider and to tell them very explicitly, this is what we want. I don't want my money to be invested in these companies. Check it out. And even if the money manager tells you there's nothing they can do about it, or even if they tell you that this is the best they can offer, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. By stating your demand, you're creating this demand in the market. And in our experience, demand creates the supply. In other words, the occupation-free funds are being created more and more this year than last year and more than the year before, because there is such a demand. We know that people are asking for it already. And we will see more of such funds out there in the industry. So whatever happens, we should keep asking for it.
So there are some occupation-free funds that are explicitly so?
Yes, some of these are explicitly occupation-free. I also know some networks of money managers and investment advisors that have screens for Israel-Palestine. Some of them use our information, some of them less. There are all sorts of different levels of it. But as I said, there is already supply in the industry. You can actually buy an occupation-free fund from your money manager, for some of them at least. And some of the funds that we list there are explicitly occupation-free, although I don't know if they publish that about themselves. They will use the language of human rights as well they should, and just use it universally, consistently also on Palestine, as they should.
Great. Thank you very much, Dalit. All right. So we have another question we have one from Rita, but Rita, I'm worried about your audio. Let me check quickly if you're unable to unmute yourself, Rita. And we may have to do your question at the end, unmuting you manually. But you want to give it a try?
Rita is not going to be able to unmute herself. She is
Got it. She's one of the call-ins without the. So Rita, if you want, first of all, we can do it at the end. But if you call in and put in your specific code that kind of syncs your name to your phone, we may be able to fix that. But in the meantime, Paul Verdine, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Okay. Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. These are just very, very basic questions. Forgive me, but is there or will there be any fee for using this service, either now or in the near future? Great. Will the system be down from time to time for maintenance or other reasons? Will it be up 24/7? I'll just leave it at those questions.
I can just state our intent. We are a nonprofit and we work based on people's donations. So people can always, if they find this information useful and feel inclined, they can donate money to the American Friends Service Committee. That will be very kind of you. But we provide this service free of charge, and it's also based on the work of whoprofits.org, who is also providing this information free of charge. And I hope it will remain up and running, I don't know, foot, knock on wood, 24/7, inshallah, as much as we can. And even more than that, the intention is to keep it up to date, which is a lot of work. So that will require a lot of human labor time in keeping the database up to date as much as we can.
Oh, and one quick question related to that. Can absolutely anyone join it simply by entering one's email address and a code? a PIN, you know, an identifier of some sort. I mean, I would hope that congregations, whether Christian or Jewish or Muslim or whatever, you know, could take advantage of this, especially organizations that have, for whom moral considerations are paramount.
At this point, the tool is absolutely open, so anyone can just go to this page, this web page, and use it free of charge and with no login of any kind. One idea that we had is for in some later stage is to include a login to have kind of approved members who will be able to access the more features of the tool, such as being able to save their results or maybe even upload list of holdings for others to use. At this stage, it's all open.
Looks like a great service to me. Thanks.
Thank you.
So we're going to get 2 more questions, and then we're going to close. Rita, your question will be the last one, and I'll hand it over to Fitzgerald to do the technology for that. But in the meantime, Tom chatted in his question privately. He says, my question is this: I think divestment is a fantastic and potentially powerful weapon against Israeli settlements, but should we be concerned about Palestinians losing employment opportunities when these companies leave, or is it just Israeli settlers that these companies hire to work in the illegally occupied territories? Dalit?
Yeah, divestment is just one tool. It is one tool that we have in order to disengage ourselves from direct complicity ourselves in human rights violations, but also in influencing corporate policies. And some of these corporations, as Benjamin said correctly, are moving out of the settlements now. We have many of the big corporations that had any kind of presence in settlements that are moving out. Now, there are 2 answers to this question about what happens to Palestinian workers. First of all, this is all based on the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions coming from the entire Palestinian civil society and representing also the main Palestinian unions that represent the workers themselves, that ask us to work against the Israeli occupation and do what we can to remove our complicity in those crimes. So if you want to speak for the interest of the workers, you also remember that they are human beings and they also deserve freedom and equality and justice and democracy. And another answer on another level is that we are trying to create a new standard for corporate business and human rights. We are trying to send a message that corporations that are complicit in these things are not really, they're not respecting human rights. They cannot be seen as socially responsible in any way. But that doesn't mean that there aren't many other companies who will step in and do the exact same thing. And that's the fact of the matter on the ground. And we should be aware of that. Divestment is a very limited tool. These corporations, multinationals that are exposed to actions by big churches in the United States are stepping away from this very problematic business. But other, mainly small, privately owned Israeli firms are stepping in to take their places. So the effect on the ground is not really an economic effect. People are not really without jobs on the ground. The settlements are not going to close down because a big American company stops producing there. The effect is mainly a symbolic effect at this point in time. It's a very powerful symbolic effect, and it's a symbolic effect that says that we care about Palestinian human rights and we listen to the Palestinian call.
Thank you, Dalit. So Fitzgerald, do you want to make some magic happen so we get to hear from Rita?
Okay. Now everybody brace yourselves because we're not quite sure who Rita is. We're going to have to unmute all of the call-in users. So if you're calling in on just the phone, or if you don't have a headset or telephone icon next to your name, be quiet.
Except Rita.
Okay, Rita, say hi, and hopefully we'll be able to tell who you are.
Rita? Rita, it may be that you're also muted on your phone in addition to WebEx. All right. I think we're going to have to ask you, Rita, if you can chat in your question, because we weren't able to hear you. If you're able to chat in, do it real quick, and otherwise, I think we're going to close for now. People have been with us for more than an hour and a quarter, and for that, we're grateful. So let me know if you chat in, and in the meantime, though, I'm going to start saying some thank yous here. So I really want to thank Fitzgerald at AFSC for helping us with the technology. We realized that to have something this powerful, to be able to, in live time, use the technology we wanted to showcase, we needed something better than we had, and we're really grateful to AFSC for that. And of course, thank you so much to Dalit Baum, Director of AFSC's Economic Activism Program, for putting together this extraordinary tool and for spending her time showing it to us. And as I said, it's going to be it is a great contribution to the movement. I will sign off, and I'd like to let my colleague Rama say a few words if she'd like. As we close here. She's our membership and outreach coordinator, and I know many of you guys are from member groups, perhaps others from organizations that are not yet, but perhaps someday member groups of the U.S. campaign. So Rama, why don't you go ahead and close things?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you again, Dalit and Fitzgerald. That was very informative. As Anna said, we're a coalition of groups all across the country working to end all U.S. support for occupation and apartheid. And if you are part of a group that is not already a member group, please definitely, I hope you will be interested to join. You can go on our website, endtheoccupation.org, to find out more information. I just put it out there, or you can email me. I'm putting my email in the chat too, membership@endtheoccupation.org. And then just one last thing, I also put out in the chat a save the date for our national conference, which is happening September 25th through the 27th in Atlanta. If you RSVP on that Facebook event page, you'll be able to get updates as they become available in the next few months. So hopefully we'll see as many of you there as possible. It's an opportunity to meet people who are organizing around Palestinian rights all across the country. So thank you, everyone, again for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Rama. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. I'm going to go to open line so everyone can say good night. And I'm going to leave the meeting open for a minute or two after we're done so people can pull those links out of the chat before we disconnect.
Oh,
bye, everybody.
Thank you, Fitzgerald. Bye.
Everybody, thank you, Fitzgerald. And thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I love it.
Bye-bye.
Video, too.
Good presence on the Hill today, too.
Yeah, we do our best.